Welcome, Lars.
Yes, now I'm on the other part on stage here, and believe it or not, I'm more nervous than it seems just being on stage all day. However, few words to myself, not as many as there on the slide. My name is Lars Ellmer. I'm working for E.ON Digital Technologies and working with the aem for 4 years now. And besides just being like a technician, I do a lot of things, as you can see on the slide. And yeah, I love to be in psychology. I love to cook. I love to do a lot of things, being with my family. So that's actually me. But for today and for now, I want to guide you on our way on how to use React on actually a modular frame, or actually modern frameworks in JavaScript with the aem. And to make that happen, and actually to show you the problem we had integrating React or integrating any JavaScript framework into aem, I want to give you some insight on how it actually looks at E.ON, what is our setup. Then I'll discuss the problem, giving you some opportunities we figured out on the way to find our solution. Then coming up with a solution, certainly. It says demo in here, but I'll do the demo in between, and I'll show you what still is necessary to be done for the future. So at E.ON, we're pretty much split over Europe, and there are a lot of websites running on our aem system. So we've got not probably as large customer for Adobe, but we've got like 45 projects on our aem machines, which are the country websites for the separate countries, but also projects and sub-companies. Like here in Germany, we own a lot of grid companies, which actually really give you the power line into your house, and they are actually with their web pages also on the E.ON aem systems. So everything is on aem now. We migrated all the companies we bought in over the time. There's no other content management system anymore. And all of that runs on twice two publishers on Azure Cloud. We just have like 2 locations in order something happens with one of them. And at all time, there's only one server running per cloud server center. And we're on aem 6.4, so it gives us the ability to use the template editor as well, and we're actually doing it. Exactly. So our deployment process is handled by Accenture in India, so we just hand over our packages and then are happy to go with that without dealing it with ourselves. We're actually in the progress of screening whether this is the best way, but that's another topic. We have got like a lot of components, which we call like a foundation. Foundation is a name I don't want to use in here. It's just like these old, very shabby components, and we've got the new ones. So I call a basic set of components for the smaller projects. So they have got the ability, like the smaller countries, to use that basic set of components. The larger countries tend to have their own sets. So basically, it's not what you would expect from a company that it's like a central set of components and everyone is using the same set, and we're having one page for all of the countries. But it's like every country has its separated project, its separate component set. That's due to political reasons. Yeah, it's like all the countries wanted to stay as much as separated as possible. It's but this is something necessarily. I think it's necessary to know that, as usually you have this central governance, but we don't. And we have got certainly all over those projects. We have part static pages. We've got those sales funnels, but certainly we've got the dynamic part, and all of the dynamic part is handled by React at the moment. So we've got a lot of React components on AEM, and we use those React components also to gather the data. So there is no dynamic information going through AEM, but it's all bypassed throughout a API gateway. So we've got only static content. So we have actually the opportunity that everything on AEM is static. So all of our pages, even the customer self-service portal is static. Even though it's a logged-in member area, it's still static. And this leaves us with the opportunity to cache massively our pages and therefore reduce the load on the AEM servers, which we consider quite well. Probably our Adobe sales guy is screaming about it and saying we should use Sling models instead. However, this works out well for us. And we just finished upgrading to 6.4, and with it, we also upgraded to the Touch UI, certainly. We did massive refactoring of components, reducing them. As you all know, in your projects, over time, you build another component doing the same stuff. Then after you've got 5 components, nobody knows what it does, and you've got 10 components in the end. And we actually, we actually cleaned up for that reason. And we integrated the template editor in our newer projects now, as we thought it might be a good way, and we have got power users who could actually deal with this stuff. And we're in the process of constant knowledge sharing. For example, we're most likely meeting up with like the DAX 30 companies all using AEM, and we're trying to do knowledge sharing sessions in order to figure out how they solve their problems, how they actually work with certain technologies. But we figured out that for React, there were not so many there with a proper solution. And we're using React for 4 years now. And there have been a lot of learning sessions over the time. So what is actually the problem? React is designed for single-page applications rather than this kind of modular approach you have got with the components you've got in your AEM system. So how could you actually build something which is modular but still works with React? So you need to find a way how configuration changes in your AEM components do not fulfill a full page reload, as you do not want to reload all of the components, restore all of the state at once, as you just want to modify one single part of it. But still, if that part modifies data or state of other components, it should notify them. And you need to find a way how to do this. So we need to find a way how to handle data for multiple dynamic modules at a central point. And this is something, for example, I want to show. And we needed to find a way, as we did it 4 years ago, how to actually get the node properties down to React. It's something, as we've seen it today with the web components. But we actually looked into it, whether we do it ourselves or not. And just to give you like a very short demo on how this looks like, I just switched to my browser, which is, okay, perfect. So in here, standard AEM system already deployed my project in there, not to waste time on that. So I just create a new page in here. I take one of the templates and call it test page, for example. Create the page and open it. And I've just got very simplistic components here at the moment. Let's say we've got like a button. And as you've seen, probably, if you missed it, there was the text button, and it switched into a button. So I just do it once again, just have a look at it. Yeah. So I'll look at how the component looks like in the beginning. It says button, it changes it. So button is like the placeholder which comes with the AEM component, and then React picks it up and picks this div and makes it a proper button, which is then fully configurable with all the details you want to have in here, as it would be with any AEM component normally. And you could have this like with several other components as well, like a headline or whatever. So you could add whatever you want to in here and make it, and you could have more complex components certainly as well. But just to show you, this is React inside AEM. It's configurable. This is not like combined with data, but it's simple. It works in here. Just to show what we're talking about from now. So basically, one of the major issues with all of those frameworks like React, Angular, or whatever, bootstrapping just happens once. This is the nature of the single-page application. So you need to rewrite bootstrapping or actually hook into it and make it more dynamic, more flexible, so that it can deal with newly inserted components, that it actually can deal with deletions of components. That even gets more complex if you not just render some HTML to the DOM, but you, for example, register the component in a message environment and handle data and all this. And everything like these configuration changes of a single component should update other components as well if necessary. So without a full page reload. And we try to find a way how to make that possible in the best way. And actually, there's something else. The configuration data which we use is now coming out of these node properties, not from React itself. So we needed to find a way on how React gets the information from the editor dialog into its own realm. And actually, React had to learn how to modify configuration probably inside its application as well and send it back to AEM. And on the other hand, there is one side is React, certainly. On the other hand, we've got the AEM, who, for example, if you delete a component, you probably just delete the HTML part of it. But if you delete the React component out of DOM, you should unregister it and destroy it in the Java perspective, so a JavaScript perspective. So basically, we needed to deal with the fact that AEM does not understand this dynamic nature of React, but was only dealing with the fact that there is static content which he could remove. And basically, AEM offers a lot of functionality in editor interface, so it throws lots of events, and you can just drag and drop the components and make a lot of things with it, like layouting and all this stuff. And these are a lot of JavaScripting events hitting React components, which were not actually prepared for that. So that were our problems we had to solve, and we needed to find a way. And on that way, we found a couple of opportunities we could just take with us. So one of the things was that if we have this kind of modular approach, we can actually, even without an AEM, we could still migrate old web applications far more smoothly, as we've got like small chunks, and we could enable those small chunks to be, for example, if you have like a migration from a .NET server-rendered application, you could migrate small parts of it and get it into a browser-based React application. Or you even could migrate from Angular to React if you want to. And this was something we thought could be quite useful, even if you're not just talking about AEM projects, but you always have kind of legacy systems hanging around, or systems which have been developed outside of AEM and then needs to be integrated into it. That would be a way as well. So this is something which I say is important for us. We need to gather this central governance back into our hands. And if you add value to these central governed components, and if you, for example, add accessibility and whatever in there, certainly you've got a strong feature which you can actually sell internally. As I think this is even for other enterprise companies, it's important in order to spend less money on development. And we already had some kind of a style guide, but this is something which designers do, and they have like their graphics interface, and we figured out a way that we have got now our living style guide, which is inside of Git. So this living style guide now is something which we can handle like real code. So we just take that Git, and whenever there's a change in there, we can actually build new artifacts. We can drag out the code from there, and actually even a lot of examples using this, that it actually drags out the actual code out of this. We call it Bravo. This is our code name for the living style guide, and drag it into our actual project. And we're still investigating how to get this done, like with HTML templates as well, but we're close to it. So this central set of components is then also stylable by policies, as we've got a lot of websites which look most likely the same. If you look at them, you might even end up saying, well, isn't it the same? No, you can see it's like on the right top corner it's blue, on the left hand side it's yellow, on the bottom green there. It's some small changes. You would say you could do that in a component, but it's all over the page that there are changes in there, and you would probably end up doing it like giving it in a design page, in an editable template, in a policy, then giving it a change. And as we haven't had it in the system due to being on 6.2 and now just switching to 6.4, where we're using the opportunity to do this as well. And finally, we thought, like, if we do it, that we modularize our React components, we do not want to do that all by our hands. We don't want to integrate the style guide and whatever. So we automated that process, and as we see the AEM as being like a front-end part of our stack, as we've got like backend systems, real backend systems, but AEM is part of the front end. So basically, as we are not using Sling models, it's even more front end to us. It's React components, there are AEM components, and we don't want to deal with like two projects for the same thing. So we said we want to reinvent the way how we want it, and we want to be at front-end centric. So we've got one front-end project, which is like the leading project for all of it. So coming to the solution, how did we actually really did that? We didn't do anything like rocket science. So we just figured out the smallest way. As we said, if we integrate some complex solution, as like large enterprises usually tend to do, then you end up with something you can't maintain, you can't actually scale, and you can't use for the future, as you can't really keep it up to date. So we really wanted something with a small footprint in there. So the basic idea is that we've got widgets which do emit a lot of messages about the events ongoing, like clicking or whatever, or changing content. And they're all handled by something called message broker. We're going to see the code for that a bit later on as well. But this message broker then knows which other components might be interested in information of that type. So each message has got like a group name and a message name, and then some payload with the information. So you can actually structure it in a way that you can have like data messages, and if data changes, you could actually even send the model name with it, and actually then it actually sends this message out to all the components who've registered themselves to be interested in that type of data information. But probably a single button would not be interested in any data change, as it does not change at all. So that's something where widgets and message broker are important for. And in there you can see we've actually structured it in a way that we say we've got on-page and in-browser handling, and we've got visible and invisible content. So on the page, visibly you've got your widgets, and invisibly you've got the message broker and a data model. Just to take that up front already, the data model is something we consider which should not be handled by the developers, but it needs to be handled central. In front end, usually data modeling is not of interest at all. It looks like you've got your probably your APIs and your backend system. They structure data and then they hand data over to the front end as the front end requires it usually. Yeah, and there's a front end developer with very little domain knowledge, usually someone from outside without knowledge of anything at all. And if you've got 20, 30, 40 projects, it tends to be that all those data models inside the application are different. So we decided we want to take governance about that front-end data model. We model data in front-end once, and we offer this data model for each project. So for them, it's easy. They can just take our code base, and they don't need to reinvent the wheel of loading data, caching data, handling data, and structuring data. But it's all done at our central part of E.ON, and we give that off to the others. So this is what data model stands for. And whenever data model changes, it's also firing events to the message broker. And over the time, we actually, for our purpose, we said that we're going to use local session storage to keep that information in a way that even if you do a page change, that information should resist in memory, so you can restore states of components even if you switch back and forth throughout pages. As an AEM, you have separate pages. You don't have a single page application. And you do want to keep that state over a set of pages. But certainly, like there is information about the customer in there, it should actually drop as soon as the session is dropped. Well, we don't have a session in AEM, but we have the session at least with the browser. So once that is killed, we're done. Yes, so basically this is the basic concept. So we needed to figure out how could we solve that? How could we actually have a certain set of widgets? And as I said already early on as a problem, we need to adjust the bootstrapping. So how could you actually make React bootstrap as many times as you add a new React component to your DOM? And we thought about writing it ourselves, but finally we found some already existing open source project from Deloitte, which has a very small footprint, 4.5 kilobytes in total, and they offer full dynamic bootstrapping with Redux support, and this library is in place for, I would say, 3 years now in E.ON, and it works. And it works in production for those 45, at least say 35 projects. Probably 10 do not use React. But yeah, it works, and I could actually just say use it whenever you need dynamic bootstrapping in React. And you're actually free to modify the code. So the license offers you all freedom to do whatever you want to. You just need to mention Deloitte. And we actually, as we said, we want to focus on the front-end development. So we thought about how to set up a build chain which works out for us, and we did this chaos. Yeah, so we've got a React project in the middle. So this is our master project, whatever we want to deal with. And we've got our living Steiger project on the top. So the first loop is that the React project, whenever it starts triggering a build, it just grabs whatever is the latest state of the style guide, or you could actually fix it to like an artifact version, and takes it into the React project itself. And then a second part, you can see that on top, actually links to another project which is called aem-deployment at our side. And this is just like a outsourcing of scripts. So deployment scripts are written in their own project. So we just link to it with npm link and use those deployment scripts in order to then finally, first of all, create an aem project. So we don't do the aem project creation manually. We just, at the moment, we use one of the WCMAO archetypes, and we just build it from there, from scratch. And then we build the React project and inject the code into the aem project, triggering an aem build from there, which leads to a deployment on our aem systems. So there is only one project really existing for us, which is the React project. We do all of the development in there. As I said, we do not do any Sling development as one probably you do in general. And to prepare that React project, you just need to create an empty React project, as whoever has done it before. This first line is nothing special. It's just giving a name to the project at the end with the aem React, and then add the React habitat project to it. And finally, you link our aem deployment project to it, which you need to have on your system as well. And then you can start coding. And I already explained it, this aem deployment project is just like, it's a few scripts which are deleting client lib folders and rebuilding them, adding the js.txt file in there, and whatever is necessary to get the aem project filled with the stuff we have got in our React project. And in order to have everything in one project, we structure it in a way that in our source code project, we've got in the source folder, we have got a component folder. And in the components folder, it's not just the React code inside the React project, but we've got an aem content folder in there. This is like a naming convention we set up. And in there, we have got the same component again with the ability that you have got in there your HTML code and also the JSON code. And in the JSON code, you can see already there's like the hook where we hook in there in order to see whenever this component is going to be edited. So with the after edit event, we can go in there. With the before delete, you can go in there as well to destroy the component. There's a lot of work being done to deal with the fact that the before edit event is not there anymore. In Classic UI it was, in Touch UI it's not. I would beg at Adobe to get that back in there. It would make life far more easy than you could handle the destroying. As if you add a component, actually the component in terms of React is being destroyed and reloaded again due to the fact that aem replaces the DOM content, and we would need to have the before edit in there to make life easier. However, it works. And finally, you've got the React part of it, which is a standard React component. It just registers, and actually the magic to get that working is done in a file which is in between. And this is in here. It's actually the React application itself, and you can see it's on the register component part on the bottom. That's part of this React habitat, and the React habitat just registers a React component to a key, and the key is actually the name of the data element we've seen. I'll just switch back to the HTML. You can see there on top the div has got a data minus component property, and that's actually the link to the React component. So it's dynamical linking, so you need to have all root components in there as a list to be registered in your React app. That's the only part you can't Probably you can, but we haven't made it dynamic so far. Okay. So for us, yeah, it always was like important to have the governance back inside, but this is like more E.ON internally important. But I think it's always wise to say that if you offer a clever solution, which probably a lot of your internal customers would love to see, or even if for your client who has probably more than one project on an AEM, it's always nice to have a central solution for this part. So how did we dealt with the message broker? It's basically like the whiteboard pattern inside AEM. So we have got like a way that we could actually register and deregister components, services and listeners to it. And it's not a lot of code, it's just a bit of code in there to register topics. I actually now inflated the components just to give you an overview what's in there. But this is all of the methods which are inside this message broker. It's not a lot, and you will be able to get the code later on in detail. But basically, it offers you to register and unregister on a topic, get the list, and to subscribe as a listener to this kind of topics. So it's nothing special again, but this is what I meant. It's like the charming idea behind this solution is not to be big, not to be massive, not to be like full-blown with like hundreds of tons of JavaScript, but having something small which works and which gives you the ability to have modular components. And one part is still missing. We haven't had finished that till now, till that presentation, due to a lot of things ongoing inside our company as well. This is like the data loading and security part. We need to work on that definitely. But as I said, this central data model is something which I consider to be very, very important, as I've seen it in a lot of projects now, that data models just differ slightly, and that you've got like 20 logins in 20 projects inside the company. They're basically all doing the same, just slightly different, and that should not happen. And I think this is like David Nischler once said, don't let the hierarchy happen. You just need to focus on it. You need to make it working, and you need to make it in a way that you can live with it and deal with it, and not let, for example, external people deal with that for you. And certainly we need to have caching in place, and this is where I said we agreed on the session cache. You could actually use local storage as well if your data is not like critical, but we've got a lot of contract information once the customer logs in, and you don't want to have that in local storage or metadata. Probably if you do anonymous metadata, like the data you get when you look at how much power you consume, that could be stored there. But yeah, I mean, for us, it pays out. The best way is actually to do it throughout the session cache, as it gives you the best UX experience if you do not just reload the data. As if, for example, for now in our German customer portal, I'm a customer of E.ON, and I'm always annoyed. If I switch from one contract to another, it takes you 10 seconds to load the data. And if you switch back, it takes you another 10 seconds. And you could do that game over and over again. It's not caching. And this is something which we certainly need to put in there as well. So what's coming up next? So we need to develop this data handling and caching. And we need to have security in place to get that done. And we need to document it. It's something I learned from my time at Provision, that documentation is essential, and I'm actually praying it to any person outside that documentation is important, that it's necessary, and that it should be done, and that the versioning of components is important. I've just seen my timer is slightly different than the one below. Sorry for that. I'm speeding up. So basically, yeah. First of all, thank you, but there's just one more thing to say. It just not works with Angular, with React. It works with Angular as well, and it even works with React and Angular in one project as well. Then certainly, like the bootstrapping of it looks like different. I'm not getting into details. If you've got questions to that, you just come over to me and ask. But yeah, that's one part. And secondly, we're going to release this as open source. There's already an empty repository with just readme-md in there as a placeholder, as we need to fix some legal stuff, get the documentation done. But all of that will be open sourced from our side. So I think questions probably later, as I overspent time, and you definitely want to go out to lunch. But I'll be there for questions if there are any.
Yeah, thanks, Lars.